Hello, I'm David Hunt and welcome to the show. It's all about the arts, and today we've got, this guy is incredible. Contemporary visual artist. He doesn't think small and he does some of the most amazing outside murals, and I'm sure you've probably seen one in your travels around Melbourne or somewhere else in the world. And he's got this fetish with fire extinguishers. You know, like, I don't know if he takes them to bed or not, but I hope he doesn't. His work is held in multiple museums and galleries and collectors around the world. The NGV's got stuff that the NGA, the National Gallery of Australia, Art Gallery of New South Wales, just to name a few very important ones. And then you come back to painting a house overseas. He's just got back from that, painting a house overseas. Why didn't they use somebody else just to paint their house? I don't know. And he was doing it while other people were watching him paint this house. We've got to find out what's going on there. A major exhibition is coming up, and he'll even be performing with classical music as he's painting. So let's talk to him. Ash, hello.
Hi David, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So where did the love of art come from?
I think it's hard to pinpoint exactly, but
Yeah.
you know, I was drawing with Derwents when I was a kid, and I had parents that collected printmaking, and
Oh, did they?
was able to give me gifts of Derwents. So, you know, playing around with drawing, you know, on my own or at school in the early days without even really knowing that's a way of life.
Yeah.
Was there. But in terms of knowing that it really was something that I enjoyed doing and finding my call in a way, like I guess it would have been in year 11, year 12 kind of thing. I guess at the time I was learning to fly light aircraft with my grandmother.
Whoa!
In
what?
Northeast Victoria.
What, she was teaching you, or she was learning with you?
No, she was teaching me. She was a pilot.
Whoa!
A hobby pilot.
Okay.
If you like, but she owned a plane, and so I would fly above all northeastern Victoria and take photographs. And part of that, I then used those images as inspiration to make aerial paintings in a way, using my first ever use of oil paints and washes and paint straight out of the tube.
Yeah.
But they were abstract aerial interpretations, maybe inspired by Fred Williams, if you like.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so that, together with going out at night and throwing paint around on walls in my local area in Blackburn.
So that you got that urge to be part of the big movement here in Melbourne in particular, known around the world for street artists. So you were doing that. Was it before the street art all happened? Was it when it was more graffiti?
Yeah, I guess it was more graffiti, but for me, and I would paint alongside graffiti artists, but I also quickly moved on to just painting on my own, because I was more interested in just the access to interesting spaces outdoors, public space. And so while it, you know, can be labelled as street art or graffiti, I was equally inspired by earth art, a lot of large scale ambitious artworks, and you know, you couldn't necessarily make an immersive painting in a garage or in an art studio at school. So finding derelict or big scale walls to be able to express myself was, I guess, the energy and excitement to be able to make work like that.
Yeah.
I really took to that.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was what I loved doing.
Right. Okay. So big scale, large scale. How were you painting in those early days? You know, like to get it on big scale.
Well, in a similar way to what I'm doing right now, but but very naive, I guess. And I would access like mist-tint paints, cheap paints. I would sort of mix those down, roll them onto walls, throw buckets of them, throw little sample pots.
Okay.
And I would puncture aerosol cans that wouldn't work. Often, you know, I did use aerosol cans in a more depictive way in the early days just to find my way, but you would find that sometimes the can would stop working.
Yeah.
And so a way to get all of the paint out in a quick hit was like to puncture it. And the expression that comes out of that was quite interesting to me. So I started just making minimal abstractions in that way.
Then when did it come? When did the penny drop and you thought, fire extinguishers? You're like, what?
Well, I'd heard about it, I guess.
Other people had been doing it?
Well, no, I'd heard about it from a graffiti writer. He told me in probably around 2002 when I saw him at the train station in Richmond. And they'd said to me that they loved what I did. You should look into fire extinguishers. In Europe, they do large tags with them. So within, like, I guess 6 months, I'd found a factory where there was an abandoned factory with about, I guess, a dozen of them. And so I collected them and started experimenting with them.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
How, you know, like, that's just a wonderful art form in itself, you know, like, and the fact that you then have taken it to extremes where, you know, like, because you stand there and you just spray up. I've seen you even do it in the city of Melbourne, but then there are some places out, you know, like on the edge of the city where cows are mooing and whatever, and you've been out there doing it as well. You know, like, and it must have grown and you would have developed it along the way.
Yes, for sure. Like, I guess early on it was just quite experimental, and I did a few large-scale pieces in the city of Melbourne, as well as, I guess, just on the outskirts here and there. But I put that to rest for a little while, and I made a lot of contemporary art projects that weren't painting-based between sort of around 2006 to 2012. There were a few painting projects, one in particular where I went to Yogyakarta, Indonesia, and I painted earthquake rubble with brooms with all of the kids there that lived in the community, and I paid them a wage to help me with this kind of colourful transformation of a derelict space. So that was a kind of a playful return to painting, but it wasn't until 2012 that I got back into painting with fire extinguishers again.
Yeah.
And that was mainly because I'd kind of lost the love for the type of conceptual art making that I was doing at the time, and I really wanted to sink my teeth back into the physical art of painting. And yeah, I haven't looked back since then.
Yeah.
First I started with just a little rooftop on the old King's artist run space in Burke Street, because my friend Ryan, who I was living with at the time, was just around the corner, and yeah, it was just a great space to kind of just play with paint again. And it wasn't long after that I did the West Park Proposition project, which was in Truganina, and it is still in Truganina, but it's sandwiched between factories.
Oh, okay.
And so I had an opportunity with Monash University for an exhibition that I was in there called Artist Proof, and I'd actually been working as a removalist at the time, like driving a van on the old Deer Park, on the new Deer Park bypass, and I'd seen this factory in the middle of this landscape just on its own, and I thought that that's a brilliant space to paint, but look at it just coming up in this beautiful landscape. And it's kind of in between at that point of farming, landscape, and what was known as the urban growth zone, which is now littered with these big industrial factories.
Yeah.
It was just the beginning of that. So I had a concept, why not just paint what is surrounding it onto the surface and try and camouflage it in a way. And so then I had the crazy idea to do that all in one day and to film it. And it was
You
an
did that in
8-hour
one
duration,
day?
yes.
Wow. And did you get permission, or did you just, you got
Yes.
permission to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
it? Because they didn't mind, it was the back of their building and...
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And by that point in time, I was an established artist, and most things, you know, I do by the book. You know,
Right.
So.
Oh, do you? Oh, we'll come back to that. Now, you've got to tell our viewers the wonderful story of, you know, like there's particular ones, and I'm looking up at some of the fire extinguishers, and you were telling me when I went out to your studio, oh, they're better than those ones. And I found that fascinating, which ones had the better pressure. But you were driving along one day and...
Oh, yes, sure.
Tell the story.
So I mean, a lot of the extinguishers that I was using 20 years ago, they were great. You know, there's a few different types that allow you to, I guess, shoot higher than others. It's not only the type of structure of the extinguisher, but it's more so the hose as well, and the attachments on it.
So it's particular brands that tell you which ones are the better.
Exactly. And so some of the best are the classics made in the early 80s.
Oh, okay.
With Quell logos that almost look like the Superman logo.
Yeah.
And they're by far the best. So I still try and hunt those down to this day. But I have, I guess, in mind certain projects where I'm going to need a lot of particular extinguishers that can do certain things. But I am a bit of a hoarder of them, and I have
oh, really?
far too many. But at the moment, I kind of bring in the ones that I need and and then offload others I don't.
Well, how did you come across a lot of them, though?
I am actually lucky. It was a funny story, which I have let you know. When I was painting the Sugar Mountain Festival project, which was a large mural on the back of the Performing Arts Centre at the VCA, I was running out of extinguishers and paint, and it was quite a big scale project, and I just didn't have many at the time. And so I was driving down the freeway, and there was this person driving with a trailer full of these water type extinguishers, and I drove up beside him and I was like hailing him down, and so he pulled off the exit, and I drove up next to him and I was waving, and he pulled over, and I went and and he was like, what's this all about? And I said, look, I actually really need some of those fire extinguishers right now, because I'm painting this mural, and is there any chance I can buy them off you? As it happened, he was the director of this company, Link Fire, and ever since he's actually been donating extinguishers to my cause.
That is a great story in itself.
Yes.
Yeah, and you've got to know a lot of the people that work for him as well, that you don't see him very often now. It's all these other people when you go to collect them, is that right?
Yeah, it's great, you know.
And do they come and see your work?
Well, they see updates of it like through emails and visuals. Yeah.
Right, okay. That's really involving a community, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's nice to be able to, I'm fortunate really, because it's not easy to, I guess, they're quite expensive new, and it's not easy to get them secondhand, so it's been helpful. And, you know, all those kind of, I guess all of those personal relationships that you build in art through all different types of industry are a big part of the way that I make work, including the people that service my airless sprayer, spray chief. They love what I do. They normally only deal with roof painters, so it's exciting for them to be working with an artist.
With an artist, I've got to talk about your space where you work out of, your studio. It's a warehouse. And you know, like you've got all your cans there, and all your canvases are up against walls and all that. You don't paint small as well. Well, you can't, because you're expressing yourself. But the projects that you're working on now, which you've pretty much finished it for this big exhibition that's coming up, we'll talk about it. But you've created, and I'll leave it up to you about the drainage and all that.
Sure. So in 2018. 19, I was looking for a studio that I could kind of build the type of space I needed. The one that I was in East Brunswick was a smaller space, and I'd built some kind of ready-made kind of trenches to kind of try and keep in the amount of water that I use when I paint.
Oh, because you're spraying with, or you're splattering the paint, and you're using chemicals as well, or something?
No, not at all. Not at all.
No?
I only use water-based paints.
Right.
But I use a lot of water in a reduction process to painting.
Right.
A lot of my paintings are almost more reductive painting than they are additional painting. And then, you know, I break down the composition in one form or another through the use of water and high pressure water.
Right, okay.
And so I found that the more and more I wanted to explore that, the more my studio would be
covered in
completely
water.
covered.
Yeah.
And it would be quite hard to kind of move in without slipping
Falling over, yeah.
So I built a large space, which is about sort of 10 by 10 meters, 10 by 12 meters, and from one side to the other it's 4 centimeters higher, so it's a slow, you can't really tell, but it's a slow
You can see the
falling.
little ramp, can't you? Well, you
Yes.
pointed it out to me, a little ramp, yeah.
Yeah, and at the end of that there's a tray, long big tray. It's just a catchment, it's not a drain. I collect all of the water and pigments, and then they're put into buckets and then through like a paint drainage system. But in order to be able to have an expansive space to paint in, and it to be able to keep using endless amounts of water, I had to kind of think about this type of design.
And you designed that? You came up with that?
Well, I designed it alongside my friend who's an architect.
Right, okay.
Dorian Farr, yeah.
Right.
He helped me design my whole studio build.
Right, okay. You must, well, on your shoes at present, I looked down and said, you know, you've got a bit of paint, but your clothes must be covered in paint. Some of the images I'm looking at behind you, but when you're spraying up walls with extinguishers, you know, like, you must be just covered in paint.
Yes, it does rain down on you. The closer you are to the wall, the more you're going to have it come off you. And because I guess I project the paint, it's hitting the wall at a certain velocity and then bouncing off as much as it is hitting
What
the wall.
about, do you wear goggles or?
Yeah, I wear glasses, or
Yeah.
if I'm right under the wall, I'll be wearing glasses and different things.
Right, okay.
And masks, yeah.
All right, so all of a sudden you went down to Warrnambool to
Oh yes.
to explain.
Late in the pandemic, after like around the 5th lockdown or whatever it was in Melbourne, the then director of Warrnambool Art Gallery, Vanessa Garens, she contacted me and said the council were going to repaint the gallery, but she thought what a wonderful idea to kind of get me to come in and paint the exterior of the gallery as an in-between project.
Yeah.
And so that was a joyful kind of time, because people had been sort of locked down for so long, and it was great for the community. It was a loud, I guess, high colour, almost fluorescent, but I knock them back with whites, so they're not like full high, I guess, you know, like rave poster kind of fluorescence.
Yeah.
But it was still kind of quite bright and out there, and I guess it was just more about kind of almost, well, Vanessa was talking a lot about the sunsets at the time down there, so I wanted to kind of replicate the luminosity of the joy of that kind of moment down there. And yeah, so we did that project. It was exciting. I posted a lot of interesting images on my Instagram, and as it happened, the director of Museum Langmatt in Baden, Switzerland, saw the images. He'd been following me for a little while as well.
Did you know that? Did you know he was following you?
Yes, but I didn't really know. I knew of him just as a follower of, I just knew of his handle as a follower of my painting, because they'd reposted it a few times. But I had no idea about his role or the museum or anything. But one morning I woke up and there was an email to request if I wanted to paint this house that they were going to eventually demolish there. It's the old caretaker's house.
Where is it again?
It's in Baden, Switzerland.
Whoa.
Yes.
So you were invited to go and paint a house,
yes,
but in your particular style, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he loved the energy and the colour of that, and he actually had this idea in mind to do something with the house before it got knocked down with an artist.
Yep.
He had in mind kind of like some sort of intervention, but it had asbestos. So when he saw my sort of exterior painting on the Warrnambool Art Gallery, he thought, that's exactly what I want.
What did you think, Ash, when you read that and then the correspondence? Could you believe what was just about to happen for you?
Well, that's definitely your dream coming out of a pandemic and a lockdown, no international travel. Before the pandemic, I was doing a project in Rotterdam, and as with so many people, like, the rug got pulled out from underneath us.
Yeah.
So to have a project of that magnitude and be able to get back out into the world to do what I do is great.
Yeah. Tell our viewers about this amazing, and we'll be showing some of the footage now of this house and what's in it and the collector of art that the people had.
Sure. So the museum is called Museum Langmat. It was owned by a couple well over 100 years ago. They died, I guess, in the 1990s.
Okay.
And then some of their children occupied the house and the collection well into, I guess, the 1980s, 1990s, when it was then handed over to the state or the council.
How lovely, how lovely.
Yes.
So it's all the original furniture.
Yes.
But then they collected art.
That's right. They were one of the very early collectors of Impressionist art, and they have a collection of over 50 really important Impressionist paintings.
And so the kids handed all this over.
Yes. How
How wonderful.
Yes.
How wonderful that they did that.
Yes.
Obviously there must have been a lot of other money by the by. But I just think it's an inspirational. So it's open as a museum to see this beautiful house.
Yes.
But then the gallery side of it as well.
Yes, and it's a huge garden, which I've got not only got the painted house, but also a homage to the Claude Monet that they have in that collection.
Right, so they've got a Monet,
Yes.
and you all of a sudden thought, I want to do something with that. So, and there's 3 panels in the garden
Yes.
with your homage to that. And what is the Monet?
So the Monet is called Ice Flows at Twilight, and it's a painting, I guess, from well over 100 years ago that is based off of, it's a romantic look at the breaking up of ice on the Seine River.
Yep.
At twilight, and I just thought that it was quite an interesting image in relation to the issues we have in the world right now with ice and melting ice. So I wanted to make a beautiful work, but I guess a work that I didn't have full control of, and that's when I started exploring this idea of working with hand soap as a masking fluid and as kind of something that would create an instability, I guess, in the painting process.
Yeah.
And so the work, while it has a similar kind of composition to the Monet, there's so many different aspects to it.
Yep. So hand soap, and it's outside.
Yes.
You must have had to put a sealer or something over the top of it, did
Oh,
you?
it's more so the hand soap through the painting process to kind of create an instability in certain areas.
Oh, I see.
And so other areas there is paint that is stable, but it created like an interesting dynamic, I guess. And that led to the new work for Bunjil Place.
Yeah, right. Well, let's stay over there, because all of a sudden you're painting the house, and they invited a lot of patrons and the general public along to watch you paint it. So it was a real performance.
Yeah, sure. And I'd been through that before, and I'd painted live at a Tarawara open day, and a few times in front of people. It's not necessarily my favorite kind of way of painting, but there's a certain amount of pressure to it, which allows me to kind of, you have to stay on your toes, and the end result isn't necessarily what you could envisage or hope it to be, but it's just, I guess, an endurance and time-based way of painting.
Yeah.
Often I'm kind of not necessarily acknowledging the people that are there. It's more about just them witnessing the process of painting.
Yeah.
You know?
And what was the reaction, Ash? What were the general
Oh, they was
public?
very excited, and I mean there was great interest with the local community.
And drones were going up, like taking photos of it as well.
Yes, we had a lot of documentation happening at the same time. So.
Right.
Yeah.
That alone is mind blowing in itself. So and you come back, and now all of a sudden they're doing a book.
Yes.
On you being
that is,
there.
very exciting.
And they're sending you copies of this book.
Yes.
That you can buy online through
Yes.
through their museum.
Yes.
But
no, it is very exciting. They're very passionate and invested a lot into this project, and to make an 80-page hardcover book in record time, mind you.
Yeah.
It was only days after finishing painting the house that I was photographing it, and they were asking for the final edits. And then weeks after that, the final edits of everything.
Whoa!
And so that fast pace was interesting, but it's so nice to know that while the project is still on, they're actually having a launch in our current time. In a couple of days, they're launching the book over there, and I just sent them a video message that they would show the people that are going to attend the launch.
And is the house still there?
Yes, the house will stay until the end of the year.
Okay.
And
so it's all very much part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I would be, jumping for joy. Are you excited about?
Oh no, I'm so excited. It's one of the highlights of my career and life, and to be able to go and make work and work hard in like a beautiful place like this with really generous and loving people. Like it was something I'll never forget.
Yeah, I bet you won't. So, what did you get any coverage back in Australia?
Well, no, I'm not so sure, but they had a lot of good coverage in Baden, Switzerland. They had local radio, the newspapers. There was a lot of hype around it.
Right.
So that's great,
Well, thank God I'm doing this show now, so that people can be aware of what you have achieved overseas. And maybe go there if they're in that part of the world. Okay, the house is going to get knocked down, but your Monet will stay in the garden though, won't it?
That'll stay only till mid-December, unfortunately.
Oh, that's only there. Yeah. But you've got a piece inside though, haven't you?
Yes, the whole museum is closing down for renovations.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they've got lots of big renovations to happen in the coming 18 months. I guess.
Okay. So it probably won't be open.
That's part of the reason why I painted the house. They've got to knock it down and get on with things. But look, for me, I appreciate the sentiment, and I really hope that this is the beginning of making lots of more projects internationally. And I've got a great follower base on Instagram, and I always keep them well aware of my work.
And Ash, but the other side of it, the fact that you did all of this overseas, is that it was seen on Instagram, and you got that whole commission from Instagram. Like the world is changing, isn't it? Yes,
for sure. I mean, it's for an artist that is self-determined, self-represented, creates their own opportunities. Like the age of social media, being able to put your work out there on a platform and know that potentially people all around the world are seeing it instantaneously.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so different to when I started 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And the art world back before social media was gated in a way that there's no way. Now, if you're passionate, determined, talented, you can make it and create your own opportunities for sure.
And I'm just jumping back a little bit here because I just want to get in before we start about the upcoming exhibition. Is that on the side of the NGV, where at Faces, the art centre, you had one of your big pieces there.
Yes, that was right on the cusp of coming back to painting in 2012 when I did the West Park Proposition. The video of that work was brought into that Melbourne Now exhibition, and it just so happened that I had an opportunity to paint the billboard in 2013. So in a way it was a coming out of what I was doing 10 years earlier, but doing it on a big scale. And it
Yeah.
allowed me to put what was already kind of well-known work in Melbourne in a way from years before,
Yep.
like up on a big stage, and instantaneously I had recognition amongst people across all different types of creative industries.
Yeah.
That's what I did, that's my work. And since that time, that's a way that I kind of make a living is through a lot of those big scale extinguisher paintings.
Brilliant. All right, this exhibition that's coming up, where is it?
So this is something I'd love people to go to in the holiday period. It's the southeast of Melbourne, out in Narre Warren,
Yep.
at the City of Casey. They
Yep.
have an amazing gallery out there called Bungill Place.
And the building, I was talking to you,
Yes.
I'm very aware of the building. It's architecturally a spectacular building, built probably in the last 5 or so years. And when you look at it from a distance, it's an eagle.
Yes,
It's just
beautiful.
a beautiful building, and there's galleries there, there's theatres, a huge library as well. It's
Yes,
it's
it's
got
incredible.
everything there.
In fact, as part of the exhibition, knowing that there was a theatre next door, that made me think about maybe doing a live performance, which I am going to do on February 10th. And so my first ever kind of live painting to a seated audience, if you
Yep,
like,
Yep.
on a big scale canvas with Ryan Ritchie as a collaborator, who's going to compose and conduct an orchestra of about 12.
Whoa. Whoa. How exciting is that?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Now, tell us, I've seen the pieces.
Yes.
They're not, like most people haven't seen them yet. They're huge.
Yes.
They're absolutely huge. Like, who's going to buy one of them? You'd have to build a huge house to have one in it. Or are you thinking it's more for foyers of offices?
We were just thinking about, like, this show is this work now for the people of Casey. For anyone that wants to go to the exhibition, it's a 4 or 5 month exhibition. The gallery at Bungill Place is an incredible large gallery, and they've supported me to make this work.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm not stressed about what happens to it afterwards. If you think like that, I feel like it hinders like you wanting to be ambitious. you know?
Yeah.
So the reason I make work is for people to experience it. It's less about where it will end up afterwards. This body of work, 9 paintings, is a celebration of intense energy, the type of way I was making work, I guess, 20 years ago when I was throwing buckets of paint.
Yep.
But it's done in a new way of making work for me personally, where I guess the reverse action of throwing the medium is, the medium is soap over the top of a painted underground.
Yep.
And then the dark surrounding colours are sprayed over the top of the soap, and then the soap is removed to create the composition.
Right.
The energy in the work is great, but what I guess is so nice is kind of the uncertainty of what the work is going to look like through the process.
Yep.
And it's only until the reveal, I guess, with using water to take the soap off, that the compositions came alive.
Yeah. And you actually said to me when you were showing me, well, you can't miss them because they're all around the walls. And you said, I see Andy Warhol, like his hair sticking up. And it does, it almost, like certain parts. And that was just accidental. You didn't realise that it had that image happening.
It's just so uncanny. I mean, it has a lot to do with the flatness of the work. It
Yep.
feels like screen printing, but also the colour choices, I definitely have a lot to do with that too. But yeah, it's quite interesting when making work at any given point, how you can make work and then something happens and it just reveals someone else that's made work in a similar way. And
Yeah.
I think that I don't shy away from the fact that the way that I'm making work, this abstract expressionist kind of way of making painting, is 70, 80 years deep in the art world, and so many people have made these type of action painting gestures. But there's something new to it that I'm bringing, and I think that the power of them is more so in person. And so what we wanted to do with this Bunjil Place show was create an exhibition that you can't see on a screen. During the time we were talking about it, it was mid-pandemic. Everyone was consuming art via a screen. This is the opposite of it. This is about being immersed and I guess emotionally connected to art.
Yeah, and standing close to it, it takes over. Like you're surrounded by it in a way, aren't you? They're extraordinary.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. Can't wait to see the exhibition, and also the live with orchestra as well, which will be really exciting.
Thank you. Yes, hopefully there's tickets still available. It's Feb 10th. Go to Bunjil Place. To have a look at more detail on that. But the exhibition runs through until March 17th, I think. So all through the holiday summer period. Good on you, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen next, or where in the world you'll be doing your art. So congratulations on what you're doing. Thanks for having me in, David. I really appreciate it. No, my pleasure. You've been watching me talk to Ash all about his wonderful art. I'm David Hunt. We'll be back again next week. See you, folks.